Good morning, Ricky. Can you hear me? I'm testing. I've been having microphone.
I can hear you.
Okay,
Can
good.
you hear me?
Okay, it was telling me I had to unmute. Okay, I'm good. Thanks.
I'm about to put in my headset though. Can you still hear me? Hello.
Mine stopped working for some reason, so I'm gonna worry about it after this meeting.
Okay.
Good morning. Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Good morning.
Uh, I heard Keisha, Ricky, you were kind of muddled. I could hear the volume, but I couldn't make out what you said. You probably just said hello.
Yeah, it's these headphones, I think. I think
I'm
I
sorry.
need I think I need different headphones.
Um, uh, you know what? If you're around this afternoon, either right before or after that lunch meeting, I'll come through there and give you the other ones.
Okay, great.
Morning, Nicole.
Morning.
How you doing?
It's Friday Eve.
It is, isn't it?
Uh,
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It is 10:02. We are waiting on quite a number of additional people to come in, and also Colin is finishing up another meeting and will be here shortly. So I'd like to give at least another 2 to 3 minutes or so for him to get here before we get started. Good morning to all those that just came in. Good morning, good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Shante, quick question. Do you know if we are at quorum? I think it takes 3 or 4 members for this meeting, right?
Well, I have asked for a formal list of all the members, but I haven't received it just yet. But let me see who's on here. I think it's what, one more than 50%,
Yes.
Tracy. Oh,
You have Angela here, you have Tracy, and you have
According to my list, I have the list. This is Keisha. Good morning, everyone. I was waiting for Colin to confirm the members on this committee, as he was needing to confirm who the chair was. He hadn't made me aware of that, but as far as I know, with the list that I have, we only have two, and we need one more. So we have Tracy. Well, Angela just came in, so I think we have quorum now. We have Tracy, Angela Holmes, Renee Vaughn, Alicia Thompson, and Shantae Addison.
okay. Can you share that list with me just so I'll have it?
I'll send you an email.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
so it sounds like it is 3 people for quorum, and it sounds like we need one more, which would either be Alicia or Renee. Is that right, Keisha?
With the names that I have, I think we have quorum because I think we only need three. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 members on this sheet. So I think,
Okay, and so there are 3 here, you're saying already.
yeah.
Perfect. Somehow, Keisha, a number of us are getting Teams links for these. I'm not sure why that is. We can work together on it to figure it out because
it's a button. It's just a button I gotta push in the meeting invite. I'll change it after this meeting because I just got the same notification as well.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
I sent Jeffrey a note saying that we were in Zoom, not Teams.
Anthony, this is Tracy. You said we're in Zoom, not MS Teams, correct?
Yeah, all these meetings are in Zoom. What's happening is we're getting notifications that somebody else has started the meeting in Teams.
Yes, I just received one as well, so I'll just discard it.
Yeah, that or either they started the old Zoom meeting, but no, we're here. We're in the right place.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. All right, everybody. So I know that Colin will be here momentarily. I also know he has an update, but in the interest of quorum being present as well as others being here, I would like to go ahead and encourage us to start the meeting. It is 10:08, and thank you all for being here so much. If you're inclined and open to it, I like to see your faces so that we can all see how each other's doing. And hey, Nicole, and just want to make sure we're all good. It's weird to look at a screen and only see names in boxes. So thank you all so much for being willing to share yourselves with us today. Um, there are three things that I know are on the agenda. One is an update on the unspent funds conversation. So that has been tracking for the last couple of performance management meetings. We typically get those results from HUD on a what should be a quarterly basis, but sometimes it runs late and overlaps. So we have been promising an update on unspent funds after June 30th or as of June 30th. So we will be providing that today. That is the update that Colin's going to give. I want to give an update on where we are in our COC competition, as well as the submission of our regional application for the state ESG. I believe that those are the three things that we'll be covering today. So what I'd like to do, did everybody receive the minutes for the August 8th meeting?
Anthony, I only sent them to you.
Ah, okay.
I usually
right.
I usually only sent them to the chair, and then the chair sent them out with the agenda for the upcoming meeting.
Got it. Okay. So each of the committees work a little bit differently. Lloyd used to be the staff support for this committee with Jonathan as chair. And so we are in a transition. Thankfully, last month, Tracy was very willing to step in as chair for the month. So we will have to get our stuff together around that. I apologize for not getting the minutes and the agenda out to you. So I think because of that, we won't approve minutes today, but we can send them out to everybody, and then we will.
I can share them in here if there's a way to do that. And we can review if y'all want while we still wait for, are we still waiting for Colin to join?
We are, and I'm gonna go ahead and give the other updates
Okay.
in his absence. So we probably will gain a lot of our time back today. But yes, if you all are willing, we can share the minutes right now and go ahead and approve them. So Shantae, if you wish, I didn't see anything that looked like it should be changed or corrected. They look perfectly fine to me. So
Now, do you know how I would do that?
let's see.
Are you also sending them out in email to us?
You can put them in the chat by hitting the file button at the bottom of the type message where it says file, the smiley face.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can upload it there.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Sally. I'm doing it right now. So I will ask for some grace if there's anything that we should be covering that I did not mention. I left a open other business under number 4. So, you know, you can feel free to add it into the chat, any other topics that you might remember that we should be talking about, but we haven't yet. While we're doing that, I will go ahead, while we're waiting for Shantae to put the minutes in, I will go ahead and at least give an update on the state ESG competition. I think most of you heard where we were at the last, oh, here's Colin. I think most of you heard where we were at the last HSAC meeting, and everything got approved. And then we did get a an appeal of a funding decision that the HSAC Executive Committee had to meet about. It led to a very robust discussion. And ultimately, we were able to successfully submit our application to the state on time with all of the documentation as they asked. So we're awaiting for the funding decision. And again, the last Sally, the appeal was not successful. The executive committee had a very, very robust discussion, and it led to some other discussion at the last policy and planning as well. One of the things that we have to be sure of when making the funding recommendations, according to our conversations with the state, is that projects are ready to go on day one, and that the application demonstrates the readiness of the project to launch on day one. And so while a few things can be tweaked between project time and launch time, the application process has to be more than a great idea. It has to demonstrate that there are agreements in place, that there's details in place that will be instrumental to an effective project and things like that. So in this case, it wasn't successful, but we have committed to and are working on a number of initiatives from inside our office across the continuum to make sure that people are aware of and work on their readiness for submission for these competitions. All right, so I think that was it for the state ESG. Like I said, we're just waiting. There were 2 funding recommendations, and that was Families Moving Forward and Family Promise of the Triangle. Families Moving Forward for shelter operations, and Family Promise of the Triangle to expand their presence into Durham and increase the capacity for RRH support for our program participants. That's the state ESG update. Welcome everybody that just came in.
I had a quick question, Anthony. I'm just trying to understand the timeline annually for the ESG grants. Are they pretty much similar from year to year?
Yes, in fact, well, do you mean the state ESG or all the funding competitions?
No, the ESG funding. The reason I'm asking is because I totally get what you're saying in terms of being able to put forth recommended projects that are viable and also ready to go upon being approved.
Yes.
But I'm just wondering if the timeline every year is the same, if
Yes.
it's possible to build in that capacity of time
That's
for
exactly right.
organizations that can kind of explore, projects with the city in terms of whether or not they're viable or whether or not they need more work before being submitted and reviewed and having to go back and forth with them. So I'm just wondering, can that be built into the process next year?
That is exactly what we're doing.
Okay. Okay,
perfect
good.
description of what we're doing, and not just for the state ESG, but for all competitions.
Okay.
Just so everybody knows, when we're filling out the consolidated application for HUD, which is the COC competition, they ask us all those things. What was your strategy for getting new people to apply? What was your strategy for increasing your membership, or connecting more agencies and services to the COC? So they ask us a lot of questions that we try to build in to our normal work, the ways that we can answer those, but we haven't been able, over the last year, we haven't been able to do that. And we should be, with being more proactive with the organizations and helping them to build their capacity. There are certain times we can do that. Obviously, we can't do it once a competition starts, right? So we have to build it in over the course of the year. And thank you for that, Tracy. So before we continue, I want to go on to the approval of the minutes. We have them in the chat. Shantae sent them. If there's anybody having any particular difficulty opening or accessing them, would you let us know? Otherwise, we will take about a minute or two for everybody to review them, and then we will seek approval. And I apologize. I thought I pasted the agenda in the chat, and I did, but it only went to Tracy. So let me send it to everybody. I apologize.
And I didn't even see it. Anthony, I'm going, where did you send it to me? I see that Shantae sent out the minutes, but
Yes, I just
minutes.
pasted it to everybody.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think, Sally, we may be able to do that. We'll put it in other business. Sally, are you talking about the CE evaluation, right? Okay, yeah. I will see if we can do that. I do know that it is ready. We
So
just
it's going to full HSAC, right?
Sorry?
Isn't it going to the full HSAC this month?
Yes.
Coordinated
Yeah, so
entry coordinated entry evaluation is evaluated through policy and planning, and then it goes to HSAC. We don't do both reports. We don't do all reports in both subcommittees. Each subcommittee looks at different types of reports.
Interesting for performance management.
Anthony, in the minutes, I'm seeing it says I was in attendance, Nicole Lamb, and then I was absent also.
Oh, that's a mistake. You were actually in attendance, right?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So Shantae will correct that.
I will correct it. I do have a question about the committee members. I saw that Keisha put that in the chat. If there is a member on there who has not regularly been attending, are we sure they're still a member? Because I haven't seen Alicia in a while in this meeting. So I'm wondering if she's still a member, or does she send like a representative for her?
She doesn't, and we probably should reach out to her, Shantae. So let's commit to reaching out to her before the next meeting to make sure she is going to continue.
Okay.
All right. So, oh, I'm sorry, Ricky, go ahead.
So the only committee that's gonna see the coordinated entry evaluation was policy and planning, and then it goes to HSAC. Is that correct?
I think that's what I heard Colin say.
Okay.
I'm happy to do it. If the committee would like to look at it, I'm happy to go over the report in the committee if you'd like to see it. There's pieces of it that are sort of system level, and there's pieces of it that are specific. I think if we were going to look at it on a performance management thing, we might want to look at some of it. Some of the areas are probably more interesting on this than some of the systemic piece, but I'm happy to pull it up and share it and go through it with the committee if you'd like. I think we've got time today if you want to. So I'll defer to the committee as to whether or not you'd like to go over it. It's up to you all.
Colin, is it metrics in terms of, the number of individuals and where they're seeking housing along the housing continuum, or is it more granular detail around the process?
It's looking at entry point Durham, like
Mhm.
who's coming in the front door,
Mhm.
and then where are people going out the back door,
Okay.
and looking at system from an equity standpoint.
Okay.
The piece on the coordinated entry evaluation that I think we didn't include that would have been interesting for this committee would be the overall success rate of different interventions. Whereas this just sort of says, how do people flow through the system? It's more of a, how many, like, what's the racial, ethnic makeup of people coming into the system? What is that? Does that percentage hold true throughout? Are we as a system working at equity? How many people were referred to rapid rehousing? How many people were referred to permanent supportive housing? We're not looking at how many people exited permanent supportive housing to permanent housing. How many people exited rapid rehousing to permanent housing? How many people exit, like kind of that system performance measure? I think if we were going to do that, we would be looking at that in this committee at a project by project level. This is more at the macro versus
That's what I was thinking.
micro.
Okay.
But I'm happy to go over it if you all want to see it. I'm happy to run through it again. It's not terribly long and it's not terribly complicated to follow.
Sounds
I
good.
mean, in terms of and I understand the front door part of it in terms of tracking sounds like a lot of demographic information
It
on
is.
the front end. Once that information is shared with the prioritization meetings with the community stakeholders, how are, as you say, is it project by project that you're then tracking where individuals kind of end up, whether they're in emergency housing, transitional, or permanent supportive housing?
Let me pull up the report. Hold on a second.
Well, ho. Before we do that, Colin, I would like to finish the approval of the minutes.
Please, yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So no worries,
I
Tracy.
have a question.
It does
I have a
sound like there
question.
is an appetite for it, so I think we will go ahead and do it. Yes,
That's fine.
Angela.
You have me absent. Do I get an excuse absence for
Yes,
this meeting?
yes.
All right, thank you.
So we will make the two attendance corrections. One would be to remove Nicole from being absent because she was present, and the other would be to make Angela's absence excused. And I don't think I've heard any other. Is there a need for any other discussion, or are we ready for a motion? Go ahead, Shante.
Do I need to write excused on there, or do I need to not mark her absent, or?
I think you should put excused just for tracking purposes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If there's no discussion necessary, can we get a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
Thank you, Angela. Second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Tracy. For the members that are here, if you would please vote yes in the chat to approve the minutes, or no or abstain if you do not want to. Great, thank you. The minutes are approved. We have enough votes to approve the minutes, but if you still have not voted, and you are a part of the committee, please feel free to add your, decision. Thank you so much. Okay. So Colin, looks like the appetite is here for, the conversation around the CE evaluation. So do you want to spend a few minutes, with that? And we can come back to the COC competition and the unspent funds discussion.
Sure, give me a second. Let me pull up my share screen here.
I'm gonna go off camera for a second. I'll be right back.
All right, can you all see this? Should be popping up shortly.
Yes.
Feel free to interrupt me if you have questions. So this is just a very high level overview of how folks are moving through the homeless system. And it compares the year ending June 30th, 2024 to the year ending June 30th, 2023. And as you can see, when we come to this first data element section, we served a little over 100 more people called entry point. This is coming through the front door in the year ending in 2024. More adults and more children. One person who didn't state their age, obviously. And we had 61 new, more heads of household than we did in the previous years. The thing that's interesting on this is our number of veterans dropped substantially. They're the only group that we saw fewer coming through the system, which is a good thing. Means we're on track with our veterans, and hopefully we can see that do better as well. Data quality, overall, we're doing about the same. Client location is no longer in the APR, so that's not applicable. We did see a small uptick on disabling condition data errors on that, but statistically it's pretty much in the same ballpark. And exit destinations, we're doing better at tracking those from the front door piece. Equity data. This is where we looked at, out of those 3,491 people, this is how the race and ethnicity broke out. And what you'll see that is interesting, this year, the APR allowed people to choose multiple races. So the report, one person could identify as Black or African American or African and Latin and white, and it will show up somewhere else, which in previous years, you kind of picked one race and a secondary race, and you kind of got prioritized in that first group. So this is kind of the first year we've got an apples to oranges comparison, as some groups would be identified in multiple categories. So in order to deduplicate that, we did the best we could to try and sift through and match what the primary was, as best we could. Otherwise, we would have literally, there were 34 different racial categories. Some had one person in it, which makes it really hard as a system to figure out how to do this. So when we look at this, we saw that the people who identified strictly as white, we did see a drop in people identifying as white calling entry point, and saw a slight uptick of people of color, as you'll see here, not just African American, Black, or African, but on the whole, the percentages increased. Even our multiple races and Middle Eastern, North African, Hawaiian, Pacific Islander did drop a little bit, and we did see a small drop in the American Indian. So about 77.5% of the population experiencing homelessness in Durham identify as Black, African American, or African. We did see a small uptick in number, but statistically flat on the number of chronically homeless this year compared to last year. About 11%. Total number of veterans homeless, as we shared earlier, dropped, and the number of chronically homeless veterans dropped as well. So that's a good sign that we're moving in the right direction with our veterans. Now it's a matter of being able to find the same amount of resources to be able to help the other groups of people experiencing homelessness. And households, our number of households also dropped as terms of chronically homeless veterans.
And Tracy has a question here.
Sure.
Yeah, Colin, that's what I was gonna, when you were on the earlier screen, or about veterans, how are they identified? Do they self-report
They
as
are
veterans, or are
self-reported.
they referred from the VA? I'm just trying to figure out how does one identify as being a veteran?
Great question. Everything in this report is by self-report.
Okay.
We're not, this is all based on questions that are coming from the entry point providers. So people who identify with a mental health or substance abuse issue, it's by self-report. People who identify as chronically homeless is because they ask the questions about chronically homeless status in a way that indicate they're chronically homeless. But this does not, entry point's job is not to delve all the way in to verify every little piece of this. It's to get by self-report and then make referrals to the most appropriate intervention. And then that service provider would do the verification and determine whether or not the person actually is a veteran or is not a veteran, is disabled, is not disabled, is chronically homeless, is not chronically homeless.
Colin, if I could modify that just a little.
Please.
Unlike the other information, like their chronic status or disabilities, the veteran status during the veterans by name list meeting, we do have representatives from the VA on the call. So it may not be caught initially, but it is caught later. And if there is a correction, then the correction is made that the person is not a veteran. So that particular information, veteran information, is a little more accurate than some of the other information because it is cross-referenced with the VA for eligibility for veteran services. So oftentimes they'll come back and say, we're not able to find this person is actually not a veteran or not service connected. There's no service history shown, at which point we do make the correction.
Okay. Yeah, because I know, aren't there benefits connected to how they were discharged from services?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's deemed honorable or dishonorable. I don't know the term, but it's good that that level of verification is a part of, a part of the process further down the
Right. But if they
housing.
serve, even if it's a dishonorable discharge, if they serve, then we still list them as a veteran. But if we're unable to find any service history, or if they were just in National Guard or just in Reserve or Coast Guard and never did actual active service, then we would make that modification.
Okay.
Other veterans questions? Domestic violence, we saw a big uptick, nearly 20% increase in people who experienced domestic violence, and significantly more people experiencing it within the last 3 months of calling entry point compared to the previous year. This is exit destinations. So this is people who exited entry point Durham, the front door provider, to permanent housing solutions. So you'll see that we did a great job of increasing the number, not just the percentage, but the number of people who exited entry point into permanent housing went from 587 people to 720 people, and from 19% to 23% of the folks who called exiting to permanent destinations. And while entry point the goal of our homeless system is to get everybody to a permanent housing solution. Entry Point's job is not just permanent destinations. Their job is also to make sure that we get people connected with temporary destinations as well to exit unsheltered homelessness. So when you look at that, we're well over, close to 60% of people who call getting exited out of unsheltered homelessness into some sort of housing destination. There are about 41% of the folks who are going to other destinations. And I have to go back and look and see what the other destinations are. I just don't remember what all those are off the top of my head. Maybe Nicole will remember, or somebody else on the call remember what falls under the other destination category.
Just to let you know, Colin, other destination, that means there's no exit completed because they were open over 30 days and we had no contact with them. So
Okay.
that's what that number is.
Okay. So we got well, it's a good sign then that we got 50% last year who 50% of people who called us last year that we had no contact with for 30 days. That's down to 41% that had no contact. So kudos to the frontline workers to build those relationships and stay in touch and find folks who can continue to do that and stay in touch for the 30 days. So hopefully at the year ending June 30th, 2025, that number will be lower than the 41%. And the other piece is, are people who are calling, is that 41% truly experiencing homelessness? I mean, that's the other question. Or is it a technology issue? What is creating that inability to stay in touch for that 30-day period? As we shared the shelter capacity, we look at who is referred to what type of intervention, and these are the referrals based on race and ethnicity to emergency shelter. And as you can see, we're pretty much at equity. If you remember correctly, we had about 12% of the people experiencing homelessness identified as white, and about 77% of the population experiencing homelessness identifies Black or African American. So we're right in that equity realm. That there's not a huge discrepancy. And the fact that we're kind of moving in the right direction of, as you see, last year, we were at 72%. And so we are doing a better job of moving people and ensuring equity within our system. Permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing. This is looking at total number served in rapid rehousing. We served an additional 2 people in the year ending in 2024. And new clients, this is how many people were new to the system. Only 104 new people came in. A lot of that is because people are staying in rapid rehousing substantially longer due to increased rents and not being able to necessarily afford to carry the rents within a shorter period of time. So folks are staying in. There's also been staff shortages at times, which made it difficult to take on new caseloads. Permanent supportive housing. This is not just COC permanent supportive housing. This is also our VASH program. So that's why you see a huge uptick. That 114, the bulk of those are in the VASH and other permanent supportive permanent housing options, not the COC PSH. COC PSH did have more than 9. Did have more openings this year, just not 114. Questions on this slide?
Just some I guess requests or recommendations on the slide.
Mhm.
It would be great to know, because I know there was did any of the COVID ESG money go into rapid rehousing in fiscal year ending 2023?
Nope. All the COVID money was gone long before fiscal year 2023 started.
Okay, so those 2 fiscal years then is just the DHF, ESG, and COC?
Yes. Yes, off the top of my head, yes. The 2 years that are on here
Okay,
are without the COVID funding.
okay, that's helpful. And then, it'd be nice to have some analysis or understanding around, what used to be called light touch rapid rehousing and is now called one-time assistance rapid rehousing. But I don't think in the reporting there's any way to pull out that data. I mean, I suppose if you could include, and maybe this is later in your report, the length of time in rapid rehousing, then we might have a sense of how many of those are light touch people and whether that's changing over time.
That's
Is that possible?
That's technically not light touch. All rapid housing is supposed to be light touch, except for the bridging. The one-time assist is something different. And even when you get the one-time assist, you're still going to be case managed for at least 2 more months. So there's no way to actually break it out. We can look at length of time in program, but
Right, yeah.
as what
Yeah, so
light
length of
touch is.
time. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jeffrey, if you go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, but as far as light touch, technically, like I said, except for the bridging, it's all light touch. The time may vary, and I think maybe we can look at length of time in program, but it wouldn't be separated by those 2 things because again, they still have to be in your program for 3 months.
So yeah, it would be great if you could add to the report. And I'm just trying to think of this. Probably this committee is the one to think about what it would look like. But I think both an average length of time, medium length of time, and then maybe percent of persons in rapid rehousing for 3 months or less. And then we would have a sense of, you know, just to have a better sense of how rapid rehousing funds are being prioritized. And if we have fewer diversion funds and have to rely more on one-time rapid rehousing assistance, like how is that impacting the system?
It's
So is that
it's a canned report. So that would be something different, but it wouldn't actually be a part of, it's not actually a part of this particular report. I think maybe we can, comment, I'll let you speak on that. I'm not sure. We could pull it, but it wouldn't be a part of.
My suggestion for this committee would be what we would like to get to, and we need to talk to all the service providers to make sure everybody's on board with this, where I would like, and I think it would be good for this committee to be looking at on a performance management perspective, is to be looking at the micro data, not the macro. So Sally, to your point, we would look at project access, how much money, what's the average length of time, how many people served, what is the all the different pots of money, and looking agency by agency. And then you kind of have a bar graph of how is each agency working with different groups of people, what's the average of the system, and then is our agencies above or below that average on the system level. So if you've got people who are turning people over faster and serving more people, and your cost per client is less, that's what we would be looking at in this committee. If you want to look at overall system stuff, that's the policy and planning side.
okay? So I guess, I mean, it's really fine to look agency by agency. I think the system performance part has to do with how do we how do we better describe the need and make a case for funding, and what data do we have to help inform how we think about again, if the goal is to get more people in rapid rehousing. I mean, I know that you all have made an attempt to do have people with have fewer high barrier clients going into rapid rehousing? Do we sort of see the impact of the numbers in terms of the people and their like successful efforts in terms of the people staying in the program? I mean, I get what you're saying of agency by agency, but it's also just the overall system. There isn't a lot here to sort of inform decision making.
That's, like I said, this report wasn't on a decision making. This report was on looking at coordinated entry and looking at equity in the system. That was the purpose of this report. The
Right,
purpose
right.
of
No,
this
sure.
report was
I
not
understand. I
to
guess.
get down into the cost per client and the efficacy of each intervention
Got it.
and the efficacy of each agency. We do a monitoring of programs for COC, and we're working on expanding that into the ESG and DHF funded projects as well. And the hope, and I've shared it before in this committee years ago, that there's some usefulness in being able to sort of have looking at all the agencies together in a bar graph in terms of how many people are served, what's the budget, and looking, because we're all serving from the same prioritization protocols. And if we've got really high achieving groups, it's like, hey, why is one group doing really, really well with this population? Why is one group struggling? How do we learn and how do we get everybody doing really well? Who was up first? I think Tracy, go ahead. Ricky?
Yeah, I was about to say we got a couple hands up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Tracy.
No, Ricky's hand was up before mine. Go ahead, Ricky.
Thank you, Tracy. Sally, I want to make sure that I'm understanding your question, because I think it's a good one if I get it. So are you saying that you would like to see if maybe in this space we can have some sort of analysis on how have our projects, the shifts made in our projects changed the way dollars are being utilized? So with the shift in rapid rehousing, are we seeing more households exit in under 3 months? Are we seeing, households stay the 2 years? Is that what you're asking?
Ricky, you always say things so much clearer than I do. Thank you.
Girl, I'm just trying to help.
And I guess I'm also just having my mind, oh my goodness, we're out of diversion funds. What does it mean that like now we're having to draw on a lot of rapid rehousing one-time assistance? And what does that mean for what does that mean for rapid rehousing programs if we no longer have diversion funds and have to use rapid rehousing?
Okay.
Thank you, Ricky.
You're
I'm just
welcome.
you're just gonna always be my translator.
Thank you. Tracy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was wondering whether or not, just curious in terms of the demographic information, does that align with the overall population of Durham County? Or, excuse me, as we look at it from the lens of equity, or are there more an overrepresentation of one group versus the other? I was just curious as to whether or not, because I know the city's is discussing all these different new initiatives around addressing people who are living in poverty as it relates to economic development. So I just didn't know whether or not the numbers that are represented here are somewhat aligned with Durham County's population.
No. And the number, that's a great point. Thank you, Tracy. The Durham County's population is roughly 45% African American, Black, or African, and maybe 48% people identify as white. So clearly, people identifying as African American, African, or Black are overrepresented in the homeless system. Durham is not 77% African American. If it was, then you would expect to see 77% of people experiencing homelessness identify as African American, whereas when the city and county are 40%, there is an overrepresentation in the homeless system. And, you know, until we fix a lot of the systemic disenfranchising issues that are in place, I'm not sure that the homeless system is going to be able to solve the homeless inequity system, but we as a homeless system are going to do our best to make sure that if 77% of the people identify as Black or African American or African, our job is to make sure that 77% of the people served are getting all these different services. There are continuums across the country where pretty much every continuum, people of color are overrepresented in the homeless system. A lot of continuums across the country are struggling with the equity piece, where they might have 77% of the population experiencing homelessness identifying as Black or African American, but they'll see 65% of the people receiving homeless services are white. So then you're like, wait a minute, how is 12% of a group taking up 66% of the resources? That's not equitable. And we as Durham, I think, are really proud of ourselves. And I'm really proud of Jeff and the team for the work we've done to be able to make sure that we are getting to that equity point. And this is the second year in a row that we're pretty much statistically where we should be. It's not perfectly, but 3% is pretty dang close. I think, all with not to get into politics, but you've got margins of error. 3% is well within a statistical norm of saying we're really operating where we need to be. And especially when you start factoring in all the other racial categories of people of color, we kind of get to where we need to be. So we're doing a really great job, and hopefully we can, as a society, fix a lot of the systemic issues that have historically pushed people of color into the homeless system. And hopefully,
Yeah, I often wonder whether or not and I know, we're trying to capture as much data on the front end to do some analysis around who makes up the population we serve. I was just wondering, in terms of, we know agencies, for years since I've been working through the COC, is that we have agencies that are not a part of the COC who assist individuals who are homeless, and we have individuals who are under the radar. We capture portions of that during point in time counts, but I also wonder whether or not some of the figures are really as true or as accurately aligned with, and I know there's a margin of error in terms of being able to capture that, and also people being able to disclose and gather that information on the front end to provide some validity to all of this. But I just also wonder whether the numbers are kind of aligned with the overall population of the county, give or take. We have other agencies that are not a part of the COC who are serving members and serving people who are not counted for.
And you're absolutely right on that, Tracy. I think that's the piece where we're trying to increase the number of people who are, any agency who's working with people experiencing homelessness, we're trying to get them into the homeless system so that we do collect that data. Rescue Mission works with people who are experiencing homelessness. They are not part of the continuum. We have no access to their data. They have no interest in being part of the continuum. That ship has sailed. We want to go back and have a conversation with them and see if we can maybe talk about it. But their model does not align with the continuum's low barrier housing first models. They're a treatment program. They work to meet a need, and they do meet a need.
Well, I would say they're not a treatment organization. Because they are opposed to treatment and service engagement. They would rather, because they're a faith-based organization, use other means to kind of address people's concerns and things that contributed to their homelessness. So yeah, it's very different than what the COC.
Through faith.
Yes.
Faith treatment system.
It's great, but it's not the overall way to approach someone and their concerns and issues in terms of what contributed to their homelessness.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Ricky.
I do want to give Ricky a chance, and then I want to try to move us along to the other parts of the agenda. So Ricky, I'm sorry.
I'll be super quick. Thank you so much. I just wanted to amplify a little bit of what Colin said of, we know that these numbers don't reflect everyone that our community may see experiencing homelessness. And that's why it's so important that when we know of different agencies or organizations that are a part of this work, that we encourage them to join our continuum. We encourage them to, get into HMIS so those folks can be counted. I can't tell you how many meetings I've been on and people are like, this is, not counting everybody. We can't until people participate in the continuum. So if you have relationships, connections with folks, and you can encourage them to be a part of our system so those folks get counted, that would help. The second thing that I wanted to mention on this slide is the new folks popping up in PSH. I think that is showing that move on plans are happening. Colin, am I correct about that? Like we're moving people in and on? And if so, let's celebrate that.
So
That's
repeat
awesome.
that again.
Are we moving people on? Is that what the new in PSH not carried over and the exited PSH? Is that what that 114 and 113 is showing? Because
Yes.
if it is, that needs to be celebrated.
Yes, the 113, yes, the 113 are people moving on, but keep in mind, this exiting PSH is the high level exiting. It's not broken down to exited to like a more intensive, so people exit PSH in a number of ways. They self-exit and return to homelessness. People exit PSH because they need to go to assisted living. People exit PSH because they get incarcerated. People exit PSH because they pass away. So this is 113 people exited PSH over the course of a year, but we didn't break down all of the exit destinations. That's not something that we
But
were
it sounds
looking
like you could break down the exit destinations,
We
just like you
could-
break down the
we-
exit destinations from entry point.
We could do that. Yes, that was not, like I said, the point of this was looking at the flow of how people came into things, not on the exit destination from each of these. This was just on the coordinated entry and how are we getting people into these? This report is not meant to be a full system performance evaluation, which if that were the case, we would start getting into like a 300-page document to come up with every variable that we'd have to look at. We'd look at each of those in a different way.
Okay, well, maybe this committee might request that we just see the exit destinations added for the housing programs like we see it for entry points. So, we can celebrate those wins.
Thank you. Colin, is there more? I think there was one, yeah.
Rapid rehousing. And this again, we're looking at rapid rehousing on our equity piece. We are really doing well on equity here where we're at 77% and we're at 78% of people identifying as Black or African American, and people identifying as white are underrepresented at 12% and 9%. So I think we're sort of on par with where we need to be and what we're doing. And again, kudos to Jeff and the team. And once again, you'll see we're a little bit overrepresented in people identifying as white in PSH with, and some of that PSH is, we've talked about a little bit, is due to some of the cultural pieces where people who identify as Black or African American are less likely to go get a chronic diagnosis and less likely to share discussing about that. But we are still pretty much at equity on people experiencing chronic homelessness and NPSH from the Black or African American community. We suspect the overrepresentation at 18% versus 12% of the overall population experiencing homelessness as white is due to some of those historic issues and cultural pieces where people identifying as white tend to be more willing to go get a diagnosis and more willing to share it than some of the other racial groups based on conversations. And I'm happy to be corrected if I'm completely off base on that. But that's sort of what our internal polling is.
Thank you, Colin.
That's it.
Thank you, Sally, for bringing that up and for pushing the needle. I think it led to some really, really good discussion, and hopefully will lead to some great work by this committee going forward, looking at the details that you requested. So we've got a couple other items on the agenda. I will talk for a couple of minutes about the COC competition and where we are. And then Colin will review the latest information regarding unspent funds. So where we are with the COC competition is we had a webinar for new and renewal applicants on August 30th. The questions and answers are due tomorrow. The scorecard was due to be uploaded last week, and it is not. It will be, but I promise that applicants will have plenty of time to complete it. Ricky, thankfully, is on our team and has been helping me with it, and we have realized the need to really do a significant overhaul of the tool. Not so much in terms of scoring and line item scoring, but in terms of clarity. It was a tool that had been used over a number of years, and a lot of the source documents were outdated. A lot of the logic was not clear. So we really are doing a big overhaul on the scorecard to make it clear. It is very close to being ready, and hopefully will be able to be shared by tomorrow or Monday. But just know that you will have plenty of time, and hopefully we'll have a much better experience using the tool. So that will be happening. Also this month, we will start the consolidated application review meetings. I believe they start on September 23rd. We sent out information to the COC about those. So if anybody here has interest in participating in those, we would love to have you join. The review meetings will focus mostly on areas where scoring has the most potential for improvement, but also those meetings are useful because in those meetings, we take the time to kind of break down some of the strategy in a number of areas that we'll be pursuing for the upcoming year. So would love to have you, if you're interested in the collaborative application process and what the consolidated questions and all of that look like for us, please join. That meeting can be long and cumbersome and very detailed, but it typically leads to a pretty good application. So we're hoping for some improvement this year in the scoring. And then October is where we rank and rate the project, or rate and rank the project applications, and seek HSAC approval on both the funding recommendations and the consolidated application. And then we submit the consolidated application by October 30th. So there are a lot of moving parts here. Yes, Ricky, the link was sent out in our last COC email about the registering for the Zoom calls for the collaborative review meetings. So if you have not received that, we will send out an update when we send out the notice that the scorecard is available. We'll recap that and put that in. So that's my update on the COC competition at this time. Does anybody have any questions about that we can answer?
And the deadline is September 27th, correct?
The deadline for projects to upload their eSnaps into Zoom grants is September 27th. Yes. Always keep in mind, and I try to remind people every 5 minutes, don't submit in eSnaps. Only create and go through all the steps and then download and upload into Zoom grants. Thank you, thank you. Any other questions on that? Perfect, thank you. All right, Colin, take it away on the unspent funds conversation. This is actually an update from the last time we were able to do it, reflected first quarter information. And we promised an update when it was available, and it became available, I think, a day before the last meeting. And so we did not have a chance to process the information. So we're going to go ahead and do that update now.
The good news is we're getting the ship turned around. Give me a second to pull this up. All right, so try to make this a little bit bigger. I filtered this for years that currently have money that can be drawn down. And you'll see that we've got $39,000. And this is accurate as of June 30th, 2024. So we've got money in PSH over here. $39,000 left in this PSH program, and plans are to have that all drawn down by the end of this month is when, or actually end of next month, is when those final funds have to be drawn down. The money has to have been spent by July 31st. So I suspect in our next quarterly report that we get, this locks balance will be zero. This 156 that is remaining is also projected to be fully expended by the end of the period of performance and drawn down as well. This $17,000 was money that was left on the table and for the project that ended in January 31st, 2024. And a lot of that was due to staffing and leasing costs and not being able to move the money to a different category. And a plan is in place now to fully expend those funds for the grant that started September 1st, 2024. This 128, clearly we've got plenty of time from June 30th to September 30th is where this 128 is projected to be fully spent down by the end of September 30th as units are being leased up and working our way through that process. The big pots of money, we had this $32,000 that was unspent from 2023. This isn't a project that we reallocated. And this money that has been reallocated is in a different vendor's hands. And that is down here, an extension request, because the money is supposed to be spent by the end of September. An extension request has been submitted to HUD to add an extra month or two to make sure that this money is fully expended on eligible households. The 284,771, we are working with the vendor to ensure that they are able to draw the money, and this money is being reallocated in the 2024 competition for a DV focused rapid rehousing program. The 61,000 is the planning grant money that comes to the city, and these funds will be drawn at the end of this month. We have 90 days. All of these period of performances, there's 90 days after the state to make the final draws, but all expenses have to have been incurred prior to the end of period of performance. And all of these funds have been fully expended. So money that's left from previous years, these are just money that may or may not be recaptured. It's not in the recapture pile yet. HUD is behind on closing out and recapturing unspent money. And there's very little that can be done unless there's eligible expenses that have not been drawn. And if there are eligible expenses that have not been drawn, HUD Greensboro has to go to Fort Worth, Texas, and get Fort Worth, Texas to reopen that particular grant in the lock system to make draws. So more likely than not, any money that was from a year ago or more was unspent. We will be looking at any money that was unspent during this year and then go back and look at the last 2 years to help make some recommendations about whether or not portions of grants might need to be reallocated. So for instance, if we keep seeing, $30,000, 50,000, 17, if that kind of money's not being fully expended, we might look at what's the average from that particular project and going back and saying, hey, the average for the last 2 years that has not been drawn down, we'd like to reallocate this because on average, you're not spending it anyway, so it doesn't cost you anything. We can reallocate some pot of money that it's not going to be necessarily enough to start a new project, but it might be enough to expand a current project by a unit or two or bring in a case manager or two. So those are kind of where we are at this point. Questions?
Rick.
Thank you. So with reallocation, does HUD mandate, like if we reallocate from a PSH project, that any reallocated funds has to go to a PSH project, or would we be able to say like, oh, we want to add more rapid rehousing or something?
It depends. When you reallocate unspent funds, it depends on which pot you're reallocating from. So if you're reallocating from a DV bonus project, that reallocation has to stay in a DV bonus project. It doesn't necessarily have to stay in rapid rehousing, but it would have to stay in a DV specific project.
Mm-hmm.
If you're reallocating from a PSH project, then you have to be able to make sure that you don't have people who are going to have negative outcomes due to the reallocation. So as a COC, we would have to plan for that. And we would also be able to reallocate that to rapid rehousing or PSH or some other intervention. And that would be something that a continuum could say, we're reallocating this, and there is a priority for money to go to a specific type of project.
Okay.
Or there is no priority and it just goes to who's the highest score.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Colin. Are there any other questions regarding the unspent funds conversation? Very good. I think we have covered everything on the agenda today. We've approved the minutes. We've talked about the funding competitions. We've talked about the unspent funds, and we've talked about the CE report. Is there any other business that we have not covered that folks may have been interested in chatting about, or any announcements that anybody would like to make? All right. Well, this will be the best 15 minutes we add back in your day if we can get a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Reverend Vaughn. Thank you, everybody. We will adjourn at 11:16. Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Congratulations, Ricky. Okay, that's
I
done.
think she missed you, Angela. She
okay.
Yeah, you'll have to give her a call or stop by sometime and see us.
All right, I will. All right, have a good day.
Thank you so much. Bye, Keisha. Thank you.
Bye-bye.